for days, I feel like we need to get blue bomber insurance. Blue bombers all over them.
There's stormtroopers all over these.
Like official staff Hawaiian shirts for when it's 90 out.
All right, we're live, folks.
All right, call this meeting to order with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first item is the consent agenda. Recommended action to approve the following items which are included in the consent agenda: 5A minutes, 7A sports merger, and 7C special education. Do we have a motion? Thank you, Ron. Do I have a second? Thank you, Pauline. Now that Karen's back.
No, I don't. It's very stressful.
Maybe we can go.
You should be
There it
doing
is.
that.
There's some suspense.
6 yes.
All right. First item, or next is for the good of the cause. Do we have any emails? Okay. Is there anyone present who would like to speak this time? Sure. And there's nothing currently in the information for the public. That brings us to presentations, 5th grade trip to Albany, New York.
Good evening. My name is John Fermanti. If you don't know me, I am your 5th grade social studies and science teacher. Very much appreciate being invited here tonight to present our trip to Albany. If you're not familiar, we do 2 trips a year to Albany. The first trip we do is our theater trip. We take the kids to Proctor's Theater and we see a show. This year we saw Annie. And our second trip every year is to the Capitol building and museum, and we mix it up. A little educational, a little cultural trips as well. I brought 3 of my students with me tonight. Introduce yourselves, please.
Hello, my name is Liliana Demaray.
I'm Lillian Hopday.
I'm Sadie Bittner.
So these 3 students went on the trips. They got to experience them. Big thank you to the EdOp Fund, who has helped us over the years build up an endowment to pay for these trips. Mr. Woods worked with us on many different occasions to try to make sure we pay for everything the right way we can. We get reimbursed for school busing through the state. So we make these trips as affordable as we can, and we do everything we can to make sure the cost is not in any way a burden on families or students, and minimize the cost of the school as well. So today I'm going to talk about our trip to Albany. So we took this 2 weeks ago now. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. We take a school bus down and we have a lot of fun on the school bus. So this is our first. Let's see if I can work this. Yeah. There it goes. So our first stop is the James T. Foley Federal Courthouse. It's in Albany. I got to know the judge there, May D'Agostino. We have a very nice relationship now. She'll come to the 5th grade to my classroom. She presents to the kids, talks about legal careers, this legal industry as a whole, and then she invites us down to her courthouse, and the kids can go in, and that's May right there. This is the federal courthouse in Albany. We get invited in. This is her courtroom. She talks to the kids for a little bit before she really gets into what she does. She talks for a lot, but she's really good at what it does. She engages the kids, which is really good. When she's in my classroom, she engages them, and in the courtroom, she engages them. This year, she did something different. She invited us to sit in all the chairs. So Mavs is sitting in the witness chair. This is a security chair. The prosecutor's table They're sitting at the prosecutor's table. They look serious, like they're prosecuting somebody. Defense table. Security. Oops, goes too fast. This was really cool. So May has been in the courtroom 12 years, I think now. Third person ever to sit in her chair. It was one of our students. So she actually looks like she knows what she's doing. More of the kids in the class, in the courtroom, stenographer, information seat. This was data seat. Working with me.
I think Tim is.
Tim's having to do it because it's not responding to your touch at all.
Just give me the sign.
Good heads up.
It was worth so much.
You just really wanted to do that, didn't you? Thank you very much. So,
You were really selling the swipe, and we didn't want to take that away.
no. All right. So the kids were sitting around the room. If you can go forward, one would be great. We got to sit in the jury box as well. Go one more, please. So some more of the kids in the jury box. This was entertaining. You sit in very comfortable seats that swivel. So did they. They never stopped swiveling the entire time. This was one of the few times we had them all looking forward. You can see some kids aren't as happy as others. Afterwards, part of the deal is this is all financed through the federal courthouse. It's an outreach program that they do to schools. They provide us with the lunch, so there's no cost to us for that as well. They give us pizza, salad, and some water, so the kids get to sit in the courtroom lunch area, and they get to do trivia the whole time they're there. So it's a really cool experience. If you're not familiar with the federal courthouse in Albany, it's originally the post office in Albany. Typically, we get a tour of the facility, and one of the gentlemen in charge of the facility gives us a lot of background history, but unfortunately, there was a court case going on that day, so we couldn't get the full tour. But we did talk next year. I talked to Judge D'Agostino. Next year, if there are court cases on that are appropriate for students, we're gonna actually bring the kids into the court. So that'll be pretty cool. Our next stop is the Capitol building. We've been doing this for several years now. This is the flag room. If you're not familiar, there's a room in the state capitol that has cases of all the New York State flags that have flown over any important thing that has ever happened in New York State history. There are cases filled with flags. And what they do is every once in a while, they take one of the flags out and display it, then they roll it back up, seal it, and put it away for a while. So the kids were able to go into the rooms and look at the flags and touch the cases, not flags, fortunately. This is a really cool thing. If you've never been, again, to the Capitol, the stonework, the masonry work in the Capitol is absolutely gorgeous. And it was done by hand, the entire place. There's a demon hidden right in there that one of the masons made in there because they had a dispute with the owners. So they made this little tiny, and it's probably about that big. So we've traditionally gotten tours for the kids, but this year they couldn't arrange tours, so we self-guided. Unfortunately, they had showed this to us a few times, so the kids thought that was pretty neat. This is the big draw. This is the $1 Million Staircase, which is in the center of the Capitol. You can see the carvings all over. One of the cool things is really part of it is there's faces all over. And when the Masons got done carving the faces of famous people, they were allowed to carve their family and friends. So there's faces all over the place that they're just normal people, just average people that the Masons added to the whole carving. But this is one of their favorite things. It's just wide open. It's beautiful. And they get to explore it as well. So then we got to the assembly floor. This is Billy Jones. We work through his office every year. We get invited down through his office. Last year, for the first time, they invited us onto the assembly floor. While it was in session, this was the last week of session. This is the majority leader. She came over, we wrote down the names of the teachers. And then she went down on the floor and introduced us as the 5th grade Lake Placid school. So you can see they're in full session right here. So the kids get to stand up with Mr. Jones, and they're being recognized by the entire assembly, which is really cool for them. These are all the kids. They put the seats all right in the chamber, so we're sitting there watching them debate bills, vote on bills. The kids really get to see government in action. This is the speaker welcoming us. They stop everything and just welcome us, and they talk about us, and he says really nice things about Lake Placid. So we get some great recognition. This is one of the bills that was being debated at the time. It relates to requiring seatbelts on charter buses for people aged of 8 to 16. They read the bill and they go, I hope it doesn't pass. So I said to Mr. Jones as we were walking out, I said, just so you know, the kids don't like this bill. And he chuckled. And then if you go forward, one more. We were taking the picture of the whole group, and I said to him, he said, hey, you guys, I heard you have some really nice things to talk about, the bill and everything. And more kids started chiming in. I hope it doesn't pass. I said, I dare you to go back in there and say, you just talked to your constituents and they don't want this bill. And he was sitting there going, you guys, with seatbelts save lives. And they're like, we don't want it to pass. So it was government at work. So we left the Capitol building. We go to the concourse in the Corning Tower. This is coming outside the Capitol building towards the concourse. They have the I Love New York. The pictures are all done by Alicia Brandis. She was along for the trip. She took all the pictures for us. This, if you're not familiar, this is the New York State Museum, Corning Tower, the Egg Theater, and then the administrative buildings. So the kids get to walk. We first walk underneath, so they get to experience all the artwork and everything underneath. And then on the way back, we go up top. This is at the base of the Corning Tower. The Corning Tower is a 45-story building. It's the tallest building in New York outside of New York City. So they're peering straight up at it, trying to see if it moves. And it's neat for them because it has a similar structure to the World Trade Centers, where it has the concrete and steel structure on the outside. So they're just sitting there peering up at it. We get to the top of it. We go to the 42nd floor. For a lot of the kids, they've never been up that high before. So it's a pretty neat experience. This is looking down on 787 towards the Hudson River. This is looking back, of course, the concourse, Capitol building in downtown Albany. And this is a group of them up top on the building. It was a pretty neat experience when they're up there just to see their faces. We leave there, we go to State Museum. We have a little fun. The kids get to do some weird things with things on the wall. We don't take a lot of pictures in the museum because one of the biggest things we go to is the 9/11 exhibit. Inside the New York State Museum is a very nice 9/11 exhibit. It's very solemn, if you can imagine. And we spend a lot of time with the kids in there so they can really grasp, because this is a generation of kids who they weren't there at all. I mean, we talk about it in class every year, but to see the actual artifacts has a big impact. So we walk through the museum. This was hysterical. This is a picture of the Adirondacks that we took a picture in front of. And I said, Alicia, we can do that where we live. Native American exhibit. They have a longhouse inside the building. So the kids study Native Americans in 4th grade, and they're very familiar with the structure. So they get to actually walk through one and see what it was really like. Then we go out to dinner. This is them just having dinner. I think that's it for these. The dinner is a great experience for them. Unfortunately, most of them just remember the dinner as the highlight of the trip. But every year we've gotten compliments on their behavior when we're out in public with these kids. Their behavior is top notch. They really are. They know what's expected of them. And when they go on these trips, they behave so well. So it makes it worthwhile for us as teachers to take these kids on the trip because they get so much out of it. And with that, I'm going to bring these 3 ladies up. They're going to stand up and come up here. And they've presented in my class all year, so they're very comfortable standing in front of a group of people and talking. So please ask any question you want. They will answer anything happily.
Did you do all of this in just one day?
Yes,
Were
we
you
did.
exhausted?
I was very tired.
You went everywhere. What a great experience. What was your favorite part?
My favorite part was the the museum because of the exhibits that were there because they were very interesting.
Lovely. Lily, what were yours?
My favorite was going to the Capitol building because you got to see the $1 million staircase and you were there when they passed the bill.
Wow. What about you, Sadie?
I also liked the museum.
Great. What a fun day.
So the bill did pass then? Is that what you're saying? You tried your best.
Is there one
Maybe
thing
the
that
governor
you
will
learned?
veto it, who knows?
Is there one thing that you learned about New York that you didn't know before?
I don't think so.
Something interesting or different?
People are protesting assisted suicide there.
Interesting, okay. That is.
Now, that was pretty neat. There were protests going on because they were in session. And we had to walk through a tunnel. And again, part of the government thing that we talk about, they got to see people protest. And there was assisted suicide. There was the first group who were in favor, second group who were opposed. And as we walked by, they saw people protesting peacefully right next to each other. And they understood what they were seeing, which was really cool.
Any other questions? Thank you very much for coming.
Great job, you guys.
Excellent.
Thank you
Well
so
done.
much.
And you too, Mr.
Well, thank you.
And especially the teachers too. Are you looking forward to sixth grade?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be so upset. And to give you some look into the future, because we've been able to endow the trips, what we're planning on to do in the future is take the fifth grade on an overnight.
Oh, fun.
Back in Roger days, the idea was to start building these kids up to what's coming in eighth grade. So if we can take it in one overnight trip going to the capital of the state, they understand the expectation that when they're going to the capital of the country, what they're going to be experiencing. And it is a lot in a day. So what we're hoping to do, if we can make it an overnight, we're going to do more in the city, governor's mansion. The other night I met the gentleman who is the Albany County executive. And here's a gentleman who's in charge of an $800 million budget in Albany, New York. So it would be neat for them to experience some of that as well. So we're going to try to expand the Albany trip. The Proctor's trip in the future will be one trip. The Albany trip in the future, possibly an overnight trip.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome to stay and continue watching government at work, or you have to go. It's up to you.
Do I have the choice or do they have the
No,
choice?
yes, everyone.
Well, thank you so much.
Take care.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Did you, and there's parents here. Go ahead and ask
I
parents.
know. Thank you, guys.
Have a great rest of your night.
You
Thanks
too.
for coming.
Thanks for coming in.
Wait, can I leave?
Yeah, you can leave. I can't leave.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Get out like, yeah.
Dan, before you switch agenda items,
Yes.
so one of the initiatives of the board was to have a report on our civics curriculum. So we felt that having John, because we've heard about the eighth grade, we've heard about the capstone projects. So that's sort of our continuum for our kids.
Yeah, that's great.
So it's a pretty vibrant program.
All right, reports to the board, budget performance report. Dana?
Sure. So what you guys have is for the month and year through the end of May. So when you're looking at it, the month-to-date revenue was unfavorable by about $980,000 in terms of how our revenue looked a year ago in May. Expenditures were favorable, actually a little down by like $7,500. So when you look at it in terms of year-to-date through the end of May, 93% of our revenue has come in compared to about 96% from last year. But at this point, it's really about when the state releases. We have about $700,000 still earmarked from the state, and that can come at any time through until September type of deal. So when you look at that, that number always fluctuates at this time of year. In terms of expenditures year to date, we are sitting at about 84% of our budget compared to 85.8% last year. So $64,000 over. Technically, that's considered unfavorable just because it's different, but in reality, it's, it's a typical May. I mean, just to give you an example, right now, as it looks, this is just, 2 weeks later, we're sitting at 98% of our expenditures have already been expensed. Type of deal. So in a matter of 2 weeks, it goes from 84% to 98%. Our last payroll of the year is this that goes out Friday. So we look at that. So when I looked at, in terms of today, where we're sitting, we're still sitting, in the positive. We're going to be anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000. Really good. We probably will have to use our full $1 million that's been budgeted for the appropriate fund balance. That's a good thing. That's, with increased revenue. We're sitting at our revenue from interest was pushing $600,000. We budgeted $35,000. I knew that was quite low. So that will offset. We had a number of additional revenue sources come in this year. We finally got fully reimbursed for our SSBA, School Bond Act. That ended up being about $90,000. That we finally got that. We closed that. So when you look at it, we're probably are going to be sitting at $500,000 that we'll probably use for our fund balance. That's opposed to it. Questions on where we are for the budget?
What, the lighting in the auditorium, yes. What's that looking like as far as, are we still waiting on?
Still waiting for the state to approve the projects. Okay, I think it's a 22 to 26 week time right now. About maybe 2 months in that process. So every so often we'll get an email update from Jose saying, here's the status of it. In fact, I think that time period is now pushed out about 30 weeks in terms of the state reviewing these projects.
So is it now looking good for the summer?
Oh yeah, it's we'll be lucky
Next
well,
Next summer will be good.
now, yes, I'm hoping that if something happens during the school year, everyone will have to bid for it because it's contained in the auditorium. It's pretty possible that we can do it while school's in session, just because they have a separate entrance to the auditorium. We could shut the auditorium doors and keep it all locked up. And there's not a lot of structure. There's no structural work that necessarily has to be done. Just replacing some of the lighting beams and rafters, stuff like that. So I see it as a minimal disruption within the actual auditorium. Gold bringing, installing new rigging, doing much with the lighting. You can't change that up, so that will basically go down to where they currently are. They'll just be new LED lights. So I envision I see some potential of it being completed during the school year rather than having to wait. So we hear back from the state, it's still kind of 3 years in the making type of I'm pushing. So years.
All right, thanks, Dan. Treasurer's report.
Treasury reports, pretty much the same as what you see in the last few months in the past. We have more money going out than coming in, but that's typical. I say that every month outside of September, October, and into November when we bring in most of 80% of our revenue from the property taxes. And going forward, it's usually more money out than in. But if you look at it, we still have in our cash suite and 9-class system, we're still sitting at about $12 million in there that's generating revenue. One of the downsides that we'll see as we move forward, in terms of budgeting and using fund balance to balance our budget is what we have in reserves will go down, and as a result, we will generate less revenue through interest because we'll have less money in it. As the market continues, once the Federal Reserve starts to tick down on rates, we'll obviously start seeing less of a return as the rates go down. But that's probably a good year to 2 years where we'll see any significant change there for that. So that's a nice positive on this side is the rate of returns are still good. That's, we're generating $600,000 to $700,000 in interest. I can see that for the next year, maybe 2 years. But the key will be to, again, as we eat away at our fund balance through the capital project, that's $1 million that we've earmarked there, that's sitting right now in class. Our rate of return will reduce because we'll have less in the reserve system. Otherwise, our treasury report looks pretty good. Pretty large outstanding checks. Again, that's all about timing. We're now towards the end of May, just before Memorial weekend, and it takes these businesses time to put it in the bank and then make its way to our system. So no real surprises there. 500,000 of it is BOCES checks, but that's a common thing. Questions on the treasury report? Still looking good financially. Right? Don't have to borrow any money. Except for buses.
Except for buses, that's right. All right, thank you, Dan. Moving on to the Wellness Committee report.
Yes, so there are 2 attachments that you can review at your convenience, but just to summarize them briefly, our Wellness Committee is a vibrant group that was founded 2 years ago. It's composed of staff from across the district, and for the 2nd year since its inception, it is led by district staff too. So we are incredibly fortunate this year to have Katrina Croha and Aileen O'Connor serving as the co-presidents of the Wellness Committee. Our strategic plan has a goal to promote student and staff wellness. And one of the markers of that was over the course of the 5-year plan that we would have at least 80% agreement that staff feel that we actively promote their wellness. And as I've shared with the board previously, in year 1, staff have indicated a 95% strong agreement with that statement. And that is through the efforts of our Wellness Committee. So just to highlight some of the things that they've done this year, they have done numerous challenges, which have been fairly utilized. They did an Around the Lake challenge, walking around the lake in teams, earning points. They did a weight room and fitness challenge with the completion of the weight room over the summer, finding ways to log workouts and train staff. We've done a sleep challenge, a mental health challenge. There have been innumerable activities available for staff over the course of the year, from ice skating on the oval and curling at the Olympic Center to weight room training sessions, yoga classes, CrossFit, and Pilates. And then there's just the feel-good things that they've done, including delivering coffee and tea to staff from local businesses. They've also found ways to proffer discounts for our staff from many of the local restaurants and businesses in town, just through their goodwill and support of district staff. The Wellness Day continues to be the most popular event in March. And so the staff had a wonderful Wellness Day in March. And another sign of the sustainability of this is that into summer break, there are continued offerings that staff are taking advantage of, such as Pilates classes and some art workshops that are being planned for September. So I'm just super proud of the work of this committee. They're great people, and they really make a very positive impact in our culture. So the state of our wellness in the district are strong, and we hope to maintain that in perpetuity.
What a great program. And really, I don't think all districts do this. So, no, it's wonderful just reading the list of things that they've accomplished.
I'm shocked though that the wellness day is a favorite above like, say, the all-day meeting days. That's strange to me.
I thought, I always feel better after those days.
Okay, cell phone discussion.
Yes, so this was an old agenda topic that's been brought up over the course of the year, but certainly in earnest 2 meetings ago. And we are at an inflection point in the timing of any potential moves that the district may make regarding the allowance of cell phones, smartphones in particular in the district. So our guiding document for student expectations is the Code of Conduct. And that document requires a 30-day notice prior to a hearing that's held publicly in the course of a board meeting. And in consideration that September is the start of the school year, and we need sufficient time to vet the Code of Conduct, have it approved at a hearing and with the board, and then actually publicize it and let parents know of any changes. The time for additional dialogue on this subject is now. So just some points to consider before you're able to weigh in on this topic again. There's 2 attachments in there for your review. One is just comments from the governor, an article from The Guardian about Governor Hochul's plan to address smartphones by 2025 and banning them in schools. And the second is just the mental health advisory that the Surgeon General put forth, I believe 2 years ago after the data came in from the CDC about the impacts of social media and addictive technology on adolescents. So in recognition of those things, some options for your consideration, the board could decide on a wait and see philosophy with waiting to see what comes from the governor's office on this subject over the course of the next year. The board could make a decision that cell phones do not have a place in the school district for students and would direct me and the administration to amend the Code of Conduct in preparation for that change in September. Or the board could elect to not ban cell phones for students in grades 9 through 12. Presently, they're the only ones who are allowed to use devices in school. So with that, I will throw it to you for your consideration.
Well, I think the research and the data from that research is beyond dispute how bad it is for our young people. I think we all have a duty to act in the face of that evidence. If there are any contrary evidence, I haven't seen it, I haven't read it, not aware of it. So it's pretty unequivocal and beyond dispute. So I believe as a board, we have a duty to act, protect our kids. I think we should act and ban cell phones other than for medical necessities. I feel fairly strongly about it.
I think that we should also just acknowledge that if indeed we do this in September, that it will put, I think, somewhat of additional burden on people like our Dean of Students, Jeff Nemec, our principal, Teresa Lindsay. We're going to have to monitor this,
Yep.
and there'll be other probably issues that might come up, and we have to acknowledge it. But I think we also have to acknowledge that there has to be some type of language or understanding with the faculty that they have to set the example in their classrooms when they're on their cell phones throughout the day. And that has to be understood as well. So, but I'm in agreement with Ron. There's a lot of data. I do think it's very important that we do enlist the families in this so that they're part of at least being apprised of the data that's out there that they may not be aware of and how this is affecting their students. So they're not left in the dark and that we haven't made this decision blindly. But I think it's coming anyway. If anybody's read any of the governor's information, it sounds pretty solid that this is her plan for.
I agree,
September.
it's necessary, but I am worried about the timeline between now and September. That's a lot for everybody to take on, and I totally agree with that, but I would be fast. I think.
I think I'm in fine, following agreement with everybody else.
A couple extra points. Waiting for a government, state government to decide anything, that's a fool's game.
Agreed.
The counterpoint to that is that at least in New York State, the higher echelons are very proactive, pushing home rule on school topics down to the school board. Everything from deciding what kind of fertilizer you put onto the school ground. So I think the ball is in our court, and I think we would be actually remiss in not being proactive as much as we can, given the required timelines, not to move ahead. I don't think things are going to change coming from the government. All it's going to do is support. But I think we need to be very proactive on this. To me, the evidence is there. The state governance pushes a lot of stuff down to the local school boards to make their own home rule type decisions. And I think we ought to just, I hate to use, pull the trigger. That's probably a bad analogy, but
Right.
I think we ought to.
I
Go
think Hochul
forward.
may get this pushed through, you know, we're dealing with students here and there is a lot of information out there nationally about this topic and schools that are pulling it out. I don't necessarily agree with this to be put on the back burner in Albany. I think it will get pushed through personally.
I think we will do, but that's, I think,
Yeah, but
immaterial to our
it's a
decision.
year.
Yeah, no,
Our
absolutely.
concern. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think we should, you know,
I'm not saying it
ahead,
won't be
full speed
difficult, but you make decisions and sometimes it's difficult, but you gotta make the decision, the right decision, the one that's best for our kids. Whether it's difficult or not, that's another issue. I do think we should inform the kids and the parents. I think, Tim, you still intend to do that.
Correct.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so that,
that's-
we haven't lost that.
No, and that's two-part, and that speaks to the timing that Colleen was discussing.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, is that we want to make sure that if we do move forward in this direction, we would notice out the hearing on the change in the code of conduct to be from July 13th to the August 13th date, which is our August meeting. And that would, we would make sure that parents were aware of that. We could put that out and not just in legal avenues as was required, you know, in the newspapers, but we could send out messages in Parent Square and have a very frank discussion about the merits of this so people aren't blindsided. Yeah. And like if we move forward in that direction, then every summer I send an opening letter to families about the welcome to school and anything that's changed. That would be a dominant discussion in that and the rationale. And then the third piece would be that given the research on this topic, providing families with firsthand opportunities to hear from the researchers on this topic at a forum, just so they can make informed decisions about how they run their household with their kids is something that will be beneficial. I know initially we wanted that to precede any movement on the part of the district, but this topic is so popular in the concern related to it that tethering a researcher to come to Lake Placid, even in peak summer, you think would be not a difficult task, and yet that's been fairly difficult. So to that latter point, no matter what the board does, I think we have an obligation to have a forum and inform families about what the research says, you know, as expeditiously as we can next year. So I think it can be done in terms of the timeline, as long as it's clearly communicated and people do not feel that this is something that is being, you know, done secretly. It's you know, it's a decision that warrants participation from students and families.
Yeah, I think we have an opportunity for the public to come, make comments to the board. And if we give them enough of a heads up, let them know they want to make a comment, we'll listen to what they have to say. And
Now's the time to act on it.
yeah, I think the sooner we get this started, the better.
And guidelines that are clear to the parents and the students, just the lines of communication. If their student doesn't have their phone on them all day, just reminded them that they've got to call the office to get a message to their child or
Right.
something like that, or,
Like it was in the past.
well, it was, I mean, or,
Yeah.
you know, going over what the repercussions are if the student has them, just being clear with everything.
Let me throw this out there. What would be our position, if any, with regard to a non-smartphone, or flip phone?
The governor certainly seems to have suggested that sort of accommodation in her recommendations. I mean, the data is showing these technologies on the phone that are causing the harm for students.
Yeah, we weren't seeing the same, degradation of behavior and education. Like we're just like snake on their overalls.
But if they can still text, I mean, with they're sitting in class and texting their friend on the other side of the room, so like that would be a problem. So I guess we could address that if it comes up, right? Try to address it now.
Yep.
Is there a consensus on acting now, banning them? Yes. Okay, what's the next thing?
So
Superintendent.
then on that note, we will work on noticing the meeting for July 13th and, giving that sufficient opportunity for parents to know that on the 13th, a proposed change of this magnitude is being suggested for the code of conduct. And then just some other things that will come to mind in terms of implementation. The start of next year will be very clear with students about what the expectation is and any consequences related to breach of those expectations. I do think it's important that we discuss the importance of modeling the behavior from the point of staff. But there's also some conveniences and luxuries on the part of the district that we are going to shed as a result of this too. When practice has to be canceled at the last minute, we've been fortunate to send messages out to every kid's pocket and not think twice about it. And so we're going to have to think backwards, if you will, and to a time when announcements were made over the loudspeaker, those things. And so it's just, starting to think about those things that we've taken for granted that can be beneficial with the technology that are now going to be upended by this.
Well, we can still contact the parents when things,
Absolutely.
that they can still receive notification that practice has changed or canceled or whatever.
It doesn't prevent the student from using their phone after school hours.
Yeah.
Just like those messages.
Also, if we could just put in newsletters. Some of our general
Absolutely.
things, people may be more inclined to read a newsletter from the school than minutes. Obviously, you present minutes to the staff, but I think we need to get them out to the parents as early as we possibly can. I don't know if we want to go to the press at this point in time for that, but I think it should be noticed that, yes, we're having this discussion and here's the direction the board is going. And, I dare say that we will probably have the Tri-Lakes school districts follow that.
I believe we'll be the second in line then, because I think Saranac Lake did this last year.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I think it's gonna be received better than we expect.
Maybe.
There's many parents that I've spoken to, and maybe I'm speaking to just an isolated group, they emphatically said, no phones.
And I'm saying people I talk to.
Yeah, they just
I
said,
think we'll be
"No
surprised there won't be as much pushback as we expect.
It's all over the media too.
I think every parent's experiencing it at home. It's just
Yeah,
like a nightmare.
Yeah, it is.
It's a nightmare.
but to
Care
your
for the worst, hope for the best.
But to your point, John, I will make sure to leverage our communication tools for the end of the year so that people are well apprised.
Great, any other questions? All right, moving on to superintendent's report. Tim's Tyler.
So today, I'll start with, was the elementary field day. And there was some initial concern about the heat, but thankfully the clouds were a bit more forgiving. We spent the morning on the oval for K through 2 for the first 2 hours of the day, and then 3 through 5 for the second. And while on the Oval, there were stations that were supervised by different community partners. This was thanks to the coordination of both Mrs. Franklin and her staff and Mr. Clark Community Schools. It was awesome to see. We had High Peak Cyclery bought an armada of bikes and set up an obstacle course on the inner area of the Oval. Beta, the Barkeeter Trails Alliance, Dan was there in the afternoon to do bike tune-ups for the students. The Educational Opportunity Fund had 2 different groups of volunteers who were manning different carnival games for the students. It was just a wonderful activity for kids. Once they left the Oval, they went to the elementary school. They had a barbecue lunch, and then Lake Placid Village Police Department joined with community schools in providing ice cream through an ice cream truck for all of our K through 5 students. The images online are just adorable of all of our working village police officers handing out ice cream, and that kind of community policing just is fantastic. So I'm really pleased with how that all took place. But today was just a fantastic day, super fun to see as a dad, as an educator, and as the superintendent here. It was wonderful. And as we talk about our youngest amongst us, we also are preparing for the final send-off of the oldest students amongst us. The class of 2024 has been going from one culminating event to the next over the past several weeks. We had our senior awards night, which was wonderful. Over $112,000 were distributed in scholarships to our students, which is just amazing. Our seniors, after that evening, the next day, they went to the elementary school and did a parade through the hallways along with their kindergarten students. And then they came up to the middle high school for the senior run through the halls, which is great. The students, seniors then went to the coast of Maine on their senior trip with their class advisors, Ms. Thompson and Ms. Mayberry. They returned in time to then host the baccalaureate ceremony last night at the Adirondack Community Church, which was great. Cora Clark was the speaker and always imparts great wisdom to the students. And we're appreciative of Garrett Hansen for hosting the students at the baccalaureate ceremony. In addition to that, the seniors also found some time to do their traditional senior pranks. And my personal favorite was they managed to change the bell sounds between classes to different farm animal noises. So you just can't beat that. That's fantastic. So the last stop on this train is commencement on the Oval, which will be this Friday at 6 o'clock. So we're excited, and it's an emotional time of year to see these kids grow up and leave with such promise. So it's pretty excellent. Our 8th graders also are celebrating milestones. The 8th grade celebration took place on Friday evening. We had students from the junior class, Parker Scanio and Nora Galvin, speak to the students about the different opportunities that high school presents. The 8th grade celebration was basically a flawless experience. It was timed perfectly. The stage was beautiful. The students were just glowing. It was really nice. And in a really just nice touch, Colleen and Ryan were able to impart some 8th grade diplomas to some of their loved ones during the celebration. So that was a nice addition to the
Principal Teresa did a great job.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was perfect. Like you said, it was flawless with the students walking across the stage. It was just perfectly timed. I hadn't been to one in many years, and it was just beautiful. Lovely evening.
And then moving down to our youngest amongst us again, kindergarten graduation is going to be on Friday. So our students will start with a car parade through town. And this year, as an addition, Mrs. Franklin will be driving our small white bus with some of our kindergarten friends who may not have ready access to a vehicle for the parade. So we'll be decorating the bus, and she will be leading the parade in style, which is great. And then the ceremony will follow immediately after. On Monday, 5th grade graduation takes place. And then from there, we'll clear out the elementary school and prepare for yet another vote, this time a proposition. Karen and Betsy will be setting up the polling places at the elementary school and the Wilmington Community Center for the proposition vote, which the board will then adopt the results for on Tuesday, the following day. So lots of busy things.
Karen, what time is the vote on Monday?
2 to 8.
2 to 8. Thank you.
And district residents can expect their 6-day mailer, well, the mail potentially tomorrow or?
Yeah, well, it was delivered today, so the nice thing about it, the way we do it is it literally is delivered to the post office and then it gets put out that way. So it doesn't have to go to Albany and then come back. So they,
Oh,
depending on it,
nice.
they probably either got it this afternoon or they'll get it tomorrow.
More the hours on that again.
2 days.
Oh, Thursday, right, tomorrow's like Tuesday, yeah, Thursday because of
Oh, it's Juneteenth holiday.
Juneteenth
Sure.
holiday, yes.
So that'd be sufficient notice. And I did talk to the enterprise. They will be covering the vote. So we expect good publicity and hope for a good turnout from the community. And then it appears my report got cut off, but that should say news from Albany, not news from AI.
I was thinking.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's like, oh, someone learned how to generate AI finally. A lot of effort there too. So I did want to share that the New York Board of Regents adopted some massive recommendations from the state education department in terms of changing the graduation measures for students in New York State schools. This is the biggest change in the educational landscape that certainly I have ever heard of. It's a wild shift from the accountability movement, and it is really a move towards looking at the different attributes that each student has and giving them different avenues to show their proficiency in the areas that best suit their learning styles, which is fantastic. So there's going to be, in November, there'll be an implementation plan provided by the state education department that will give school districts such as ours sufficient time to map out what these changes actually mean with the rubber hitting the road. Just some of the major changes included are sunsetting the mandatory requirements of Regents exams, and just having that be one option of several where students can show their proficiency. Moving from a single diploma instead of the multiple diplomas that are presently offered at different high schools. So we have presently a local diploma, a Regents diploma, and a Regents advanced designation diploma, and just simply making it, in our case, a diploma from Lake Placid High School. So that is a big change. Another one that I think is really promising for us and for kids too is they're looking at departing from granting credits based on time served in a class and in a seat. And instead, they're looking at providing avenues for students to obtain credits based on their ability to show their proficiency on a given subject that of a class they've been in. So the opportunities for acceleration and for students to be motivated are pretty substantial in a climate such as that. I know for years they've fought the fight over seat time and having kids come in and over the summer and make up additional days, and it seems like that is something that's going away. So I'm looking forward to the November guidance, but I'm just surprised at the extent to which the state education department is thinking along this vein. I think it's a really promising direction for schools.
Will is this all going to be mandatory, or are any of these components left up to the district? I'm just curious about the one diploma, because what would be the point of a student that is doing Regents with advanced designation and they've worked for that if they're just getting the same diploma that everybody else is getting?
It's a good question. And I suspect that the incentivization of that type of performance will probably go away. I think the idea is, I don't think kids are going to gravitate towards Regents exams if they have alternative pathways. And if everyone's recognized in the same vein, I just see a substantial reduction in the number of Regents exams that are taken.
And also, if it seems like we're going to more of a portfolio type of overview of a student, how does that then correspond when the student has to take entrance exams, whether it be SATs, ACTs for college or whatever, if they're leaving here with a more of a portfolio, a thematic portrait. I mean, how is that going to move into when they have to colleges? And some of them have moved away from it, but there are still some colleges that are looking at those exams. So how's that going to play? You have to wonder.
Yeah, and it's ironic, Colleen, that very question was posed at the Board of Regents meeting by my predecessor, Dr. McDaniel, former guidance counselor.
Roger.
And Roger, being a guidance counselor and now a regent, said, well, these are all well and good, but how do you translate the story of a student to a higher institution so that they know what they're getting?
Right.
And the commissioner said to Roger that they are working with higher ed simultaneously. The hope is that as these portraits of a graduate that they're calling them are developed, that they're able to dock with the mothership of higher education at the same time. It's a pretty lofty
No, it
enterprise.
is. It's a really.
It's one thing to have the SUNY system, like, you know, but to what extent private institutions in higher ed will follow, I don't know. But your point is well taken.
Well, and then you also look at, talks about here, like a student that might be in a particular class that starts in September, by the end of October, early November, they've achieved everything. Where are they being bumped to? And are other classes going to be overloaded while some have less students? I mean, I'm just immediately thinking of all the little things that need to fall into
100%.
place here.
I know they're starting with 3 focus group sessions prior to the implementation date in November. We're also soliciting questions for consideration, and there's an FAQ document that they've been generating, but the questions are proliferating at a pretty rapid rate. I do think that some of the things that we've done with Stream, for example, and some of the community-based and work-based learning that our kids are doing through their internships with the town and ORTA, maybe there's an opportunity to lean more in that direction if kids aren't encumbered so substantially to be in a seat if they've already showed proficiency. I think that's what, I suspect that was what they're getting at, is, you know, real world experience, there is no substitute for it. So if schools are able to liberate kids from some of those expectations that prevent that, we could have a lot of fun here in the class, you know, with what we've already built. So I think.
I can think of one example of how, just from our experience, so, you know, Ethan, our graduating senior, did the BOCES program. But that prevented him from getting a Regents diploma because he then was taking courses at BOCES and was not able to do the Regents. So he cannot get the Regents. That prevents him from getting certain financial aid in the SUNY system because he doesn't have a Regents degree. However, the SUNY system has a natural resource science program that the BOCES program wants to funnel kids into. So right there, you have this like break where you're telling kids, hey, go to this BOCES program, it's great. But then also if they pursue a higher education, even in the New York State system, they're not able to. Or there's more barriers. And so you know, we're kind of shooting ourselves in the foot. So I think that can kind of work. And I think it also kind of probably helps align us with other states that don't have, like, the Regents program is not a universal program.
It certainly isn't.
I'd never heard of that.
My kids,
growing
when they
up.
went to college, you know, to universities out of state, we say, oh, they have Regents schools.
What is that?
That meant
Yeah.
nothing.
That meant
So,
nothing,
yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of funny because like no one cares.
Nobody
Aside.
cares, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is helpful, that there are situations where that will be helpful to find other ways to say, those of you wanting to go into advanced academics will maybe still want to take that Regents level, and there's some payoff for having the, you know, because I think that if they do the portfolio focused with the Regents, then there has to be some payoff in the system later for that portfolio, regardless of whether it's the Regents or it's an arts or it's, you know, whatever the focus is for that student. You know, when they go into that higher education system or when they go into the job market, there would have to be a way to designate their accomplishments and the focus outside of the public school system.
Yeah, I can imagine that AP classes will become much more integral to students showcasing their effort and ability to hire it, you know, as a result of this. it's an interesting time to be in education. So
Do they have a rollout of this, how this is going to play out over time?
just that they're going to solicit enough questions to try and answer them in a thoughtful manner in November for an implementation plan. But if I was forecasting it, they've often put a 5-year track in place when it's come to adoption of new standards, like next generation learning standards. So I could see a 5-year turnaround as a time, and they like usually designate each year as like year 1 is raising awareness, and then year 2 is providing professional development, and year 3 is it'll be interesting to see how the tacticians are able to harness the ideologues' wishes here. It's going to be a logistical challenge.
Yeah, for sure.
And just a final note, one other piece of information from Albany, the legislature passed a bill which calls for all school boards to appoint at least one student member to serve as an ex officio member on the Board of Education. As of yet, I believe the governor has not signed this bill into law. It is very probable that she will do so. So who knows? In time, this may be an 8-person organization.
So that's great. We talked about civics.
Yeah.
That's my report. All right, any other questions for Tim?
Okay.
All right, information for the boards. You'll see claims, audit, and the extracurriculars report. You'll also see some executive content. So we begin the transition for the new board. So it's a little more as well. All right, any questions there? 5A was in consent. That brings us to personnel matters. Personnel consent agenda recommended action. Approve the following items which are included in the consent agenda. Boy, that's a long list. 6B, teaching staff tenure recommendations. 6C, teaching staff appointments. 6D, teaching staff maternity leave and extended maternity leave. 6E, long-term teaching staff appointments. 6F, summer school / work appointments. 6G, appointment of instructional department leaders for the 2024, 2025, and 2025-2026 school years. 6H, teaching staff unpaid leave of absence. 6I, management of confidential salary 2024 to 2025. 6J, CSEA temporary appointment. 6K, CSEA resignation.
I should say termination,
Sorry, termination.
and the last one's not there.
And I'll stop there. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Colleen.
Second.
I'm gonna give a second to Colleen 2, because I like that.
Volume 2.
Very, very orderly. Colleen 1, Colleen 2. Right. Any discussion, changes? If not, please vote. What is the thing that the guy says in the musical 1776? He, I remember that musical 1776. What is it that he says? He always defers to New York or whatever. New Jersey defers.
I yield my time.
Or yeah.
I yield.
Yeah.
I remember one of them abstains courteously every time.
6 yes.
Awesome. And Dan, the executive content on the consent agenda, that's a rollover from last year, so you can disregard that. My apologies. But I do want to welcome Mary Smith, who will be joining us as our new ELL teacher. So we're very pleased and excited to have Mary joining us. I also would like to congratulate Dmitry Fedorov in joining our district as a full-time employee with the passage of that consent agenda. So thank you all involved in the committees. And as a final note, we are entering summer with 0 instructional positions to fill.
Oh, great.
So that's a good place to be.
All right, 7A was in consent. Brings us to donation acceptance. Recommended action, whereas the Lake Placid Central Schools Board of Education Policy 6255, donations, gifts, and grants to the district allows for the superintendent of schools to accept on behalf of the board gifts, donations, and grants having a value of less than $1,500 Whereas the monies have been granted as follows: Adirondack Foundation in the total amount of $47,000 as follows: Gerald K. Douglas Scholarship Fund, $4,000; Lake Placid Education Foundation Fund, $20,000; Nash Williams Founding Family Scholarship, $23,000; Placid Education Foundation Fund. Oh, did I just go wrong? Sorry, I read those wrong. You can go read it yourself.
We can read it.
Yeah. Now therefore be it resolved in accordance with policy 6255, the Board of Education hereby accepts the checks from the Adirondack Foundation for the scholarships referenced above in the total amount of $47,000. Do I have a motion?
Yes.
Doug, second?
Second.
Thank you, Ron. Any discussion? If not, please vote.
Six yes.
Everyone, and thank you for the continued generosity of those families and organizations. 7C was in consent. Brings us to the second for the good of the cause. Do we have any communications?
Nope.
All right. 9A, linking goals with agenda items.
Students, first and foremost, John Fermante's presentation. Albany trip.
Do we have a closing the opportunity gap one? Or is that under students? First and foremost?
I think we should list those.
Yeah, someone, they pulled it out. And
Yeah, we should list those things. The 6 things or whatever
should.
they are.
They're on the,
Strategic goal number
Front page,
2,
and I handed that
education
out.
as well, because that trip is covered. And so the cost to the families, the students is minimal, which I think is important to drop those barriers.
Even the kindergarten bus for graduation, right?
That's a great idea.
Don't have vehicles, right?
And then also the scholarships. Probably help with that as well. All right, if you have any others, please tell Karen. You want my cheat sheet?
No.
Everybody had those.
I kept mine. All right. That brings us to the adjournment phase. Oh, no, we need a exec session. Where's that?
I added it at the bottom.
It's not all the stuff that's there. It's the
Maybe refresh the page.
full section.
There. All right, so we'll leave that adjournment phase. Next meeting, June 25th, we'll have a special meeting to accept the results of the election. Please, everyone, go out and vote on the 24th from 2 to 8 p.m. at Lake Placid Elementary School, and is the Wilmington location at the town hall.
Community.
Sorry, community center. Any old agenda topics?
Tim, are we still hoping that driver ed would be a year from this year?
Yeah, we'll take this year to figure out how to get the students in the schedule for the following year to find and get the right people. But it's no secret now that the teacher who's stepping up and is enrolled in this program for the summer is Brendan Gotham. So we thank Mr. Gotham for.
No, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Are you gonna get one of those cars with the brake pedal on this side too?
I think that's a requirement.
Yeah, I think it gets added, I think years ago, Pat Patterson, a mechanic, so that's what we do every summer. is we put the brake on the passenger side of the vehicle. I think we used to rent them for the summer, right, Karen? Yeah. We'll probably end up purchasing something that we can also use.
It's been a long time coming, so I
Minivans are always practical.
Yes, I agree.
yeah, that's just both this stuff. I know. It's just like, I don't say we're giving them, no, but I just think it's amazing that we're doing that.
All right, new agenda topics.
Something just daycare in Lake Placid community is a really burning subject. And I've heard from parents and other daycare providers like somebody that just opened a place in Bloomingdale that's getting Lake Placid kids there. And I think,
Oh, wow.
yeah, and because I mean, and you can impactful and you can relate to that. But that's a concern because there's more Lake Placid teachers, young teachers coming in, doing have families, and everybody's always securing daycare in their statement. So I think that's something.
It's a good goal.
And the first July.
Just be there. So jovial.
We're just, I was thinking about coming to meetings, be like, let's move all of this to July.
Yeah, I was wondering.
And then just adjourn the
Yeah.
meeting.
They always say they're gonna come.
Oh, I'm not gonna say that. Might show up just to cause trouble. All right, we will, do the recommended action, motion to go into executive session for the discussing of a 10-year recommendation as well as the discuss.
It should just say the superintendent's
Oh.
evaluation and contract. You
Okay.
changed it, sorry.
As well to, or just to discuss the superintendent's evaluation and contract. Do we have a motion? Pick anybody, Karen. All right, all those in favor?
I
We'll go into exec session at 7:12 PM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and graduation?
Yes.
share.
Yeah.
Any of you? Excellent.
Karen, can I attend next Tuesday when you affirm everything virtually? Just because I have kids in Sarah, I have kids in Wilmington, that meets back and forth all day, just for the, Tuesday.
Yeah, the meeting.
Yeah, can I
Yeah,
just do that? Cause like driving
Your
back and forth
copy.
is crazy.
yeah, no, for
Okay.
sure.
I try not to do that, but
If you will remember.
Oh, perfect, yeah.
What
Trying
time
to
you
phone.
came out. and it's
Sounds
like-
good.
and then
As I said
you
to
vote.
Jim, if I screwed it up on the paperwork.
Yeah.
way
Oh,
things
Karen,
are
you need this
written out,
paper.
call me